Hey there, and today I'd like to talk about the Parker UK Duofold. This particular one is a junior and is from around the 1960s. And we know it's a junior because of the thin cap band and on the nib where it is engraved with a number 10. So this pen has been in my possession for about 3 weeks, and I have to say it is one of my most fantastic writers. I'll show you in the writing sample relatively soon, but this pen is just an absolutely fantastic writer. I cannot stop writing with it. But in terms of appearance, this just looks like a pretty generic, typical vintage pen. Because after all, it is a black pen. It is a plastic resin pen. There is nothing special about the material. There is nothing special about its size. And there is nothing special about its shape either. The only thing interesting about the looks of this pen is the fact that it doesn't look like a vintage or modern Duofold, US Duofold for that matter. In fact, it looks really similar to a Vacuumatic from about the same era. So, it's interesting. I don't know what Parker was trying to do, but they were definitely trying to make the US and UK Duofolds distinct. But I do like the shape and size of this pen. It's very comfortable and it's simple. It's just a pen and it does what a pen does. And it's great at that. But anyway, let's get into the details here. We have the Parker clip. It is a relatively stiff clip, but it's functional. And on the top here you have the finial, which is just the resin in the same color as the pen itself. If you got a burgundy Parker Duofold, you would have burgundy on the top. If you got a blue Duofold, you would get blue on the top. It's pretty simple. And on the cap band you have this very iconic pattern. I'm not sure what this is called. I think it's Charons or Charons. This being the junior, like I said, it has a thinner cap band. A standard UK Duofold would probably look something like this. It would probably have a cap band that is about this thickness right here. But the patterns are the same and they look very retro, that's for sure. And then on the pen body here, Parker Duofold, made in England with the Parker logo. And that's the entire pen. That's the entire pen. And on the rear finial here, all you have is just a rounded off resin. It's just a cigar shaped end. There is nothing else to the pen besides that. Then you can twist the cap off. The threads are nice and this pen never leaks. In fact, it doesn't even burp from the nib here, which is very impressive actually, I feel, for some of these vintage pens. And do excuse the ink on my finger there. I had to tune another pen of mine. So here is the section, small section with the threads like I mentioned, very subdued but very functional. And the section has a very, very slight taper down to the nib, and there is no taper back up. But it is very comfortable and it doesn't really slip at all. And then here's the nib. We have the ebonite feed. Very, very nice feed on this one. Very wet. Ink flow is very consistent. And the nib itself here. This is a 14 karat nib. It has the words Parker, 14 karat, 58.5 and England. You can't really see too well because it's kind of faded away. There you go. It isn't a big nib at all, neither is it a big feed, but for vintage pens, I mean, that's pretty normal. Then let's go ahead and twist off the pen barrel because yes, this is a Parker 51 type of filling mechanism, which is another thing I have to mention. The earlier UK Duofolds, like the 1950s and the 1940 Duofolds, they had the button filler on the back. So there would be a blind cap and you would twist that off. Sort of like, well actually exactly like the Vacuumatic. That's rolling away, isn't it? You would have this and you would press it down to refill it. But on these new Duofolds is what they're called, they employed the Parker 51 method of filling, which is this almost cartridge converter looking aerometric system where you press this and hold it and you would fill up the pen. And on this cartridge, I guess it says to fill, press ribbed bar at least 5 times. So they're quite nice to give you all the instructions you need. Lastly, let us take a look at size. This is not a big pen by any means. I mean, vintage pens are smaller, generally, anyway. And this being a junior makes it even smaller than that. I mean, let's compare it with, obviously, a Lamy Safari. And you can just see the size of this pen. It's also thin, a very thin pen. In terms of comparisons with a Jinhao X850, the X850 absolutely dwarfs this pen. And here it is with a modern Parker. This is the Parker IM. And you can see even the IM, which is a pretty small looking pen, is longer and a bit thicker than this. So in terms of size, it's definitely not a big pen, but I feel like it is a very comfortable pen, personally, to hold. Fits pretty good in my hand, and you barely feel the weight of the pen. It is a very, very light pen. So that is all I have to say about the pen itself. Let's go ahead and do a writing sample. Okay, so here we have the Parker UK Duofold. And this here is a junior. I do apologize for the background noise. It's my like blinds swaying around. And I'm gonna stop talking for the next sentence because I can't really write when I talk. There we are, very nice, very smooth writer. In terms of wetness, this is not the wettest pen I've ever used, but it is just wet enough to be very smooth. This is a very smooth pen. And line variation, this is a 14 karat, by the way, I forgot to mention, this is a 14 karat medium nib. Line variation is pretty generic, pretty nice and consistent. And I also didn't talk about the ink. The ink is Waterman Intense Black. That is the ink. Paper is Clairefontaine. Then, in terms of fast writing, no problem at all. The feed keeps up perfectly. I am not using any pressure at all when I'm doing this. Just letting the pen glide across the page. No issues whatsoever. And the one final thing, this pen writes relatively bouncy. It is a springy nib, but also since it is a vintage pen, it does have that vintage flex element. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to demonstrate that. See, I'm not even pressing it down all that. We do have some railroading. That this is not supposed to be a flex pen after all, but you can see pretty consistent, and you can get very, very nice flex out of this pen. So a beautiful writer, and for the price, if you can get a good vintage UK Duofold, I think you should get it.